Britain's revolutionary V-bomber goes into service with the Royal Air Force. It's 10 years since the V-bomber specification was laid down, demanding more than 100% advance in performance over the bombers then in service. The Vulcan meets those specifications triumphantly. Apart from anything else, it is believed to be the world's fastest operational bomber, capable of carrying nuclear weapons at about the speed of sound. The huge plane contains enough sheet metal to cover 1.5 football pitches, nearly 2 miles of tubing, and 14 miles of electric cable. And yet, pilots say that when you fly her, you might be forgiven for thinking you are at the controls of a fighter.
My name's Mike Pollitt, and I got involved with things and matters aeronautical really from an early age. My father had been a Second World War pilot, so I think flying was probably in the blood. Did 34 years in the RAF, finished up as a wing commander, but started flying on the Jet Promise through training, then went on to Hunters, and then was posted to the Phantom, and somehow that got mysteriously changed to the Vulcan. And so I arrived at RAF Scampton, which is 5 miles north of Lincoln, in 1977, and began flying training on this beautiful aircraft, and flew with them for many years. My first instructor, he was a display pilot. He said, I'll show you the takeoff, Mike, but I'm going to show you my display takeoff. So he applied full power, pulled the stick right back, and then put on full left aileron. And we departed the airfield with him saying, never worry about the pitch, will always outdo the roll. We shot off in this amazing wing over, and I thought, my God, what have I joined? It's a beautiful aircraft to fly. She can bite because there's no stall characteristics, because she has no tailplane. So you don't get any light buffet warning and certainly no heavy buffet. You suddenly notice there's a huge rate of descent going on. This particular aircraft flew with the RAF for 20 years. She was manufactured in '64. Came here after relatively few flying hours. She's got about 5,700 flying hours logged to her. In the early 90s, she was very badly vandalized to the point where the joysticks had been hacksawed off. And a guy called Derek Powell formed the Maintenance and Preservation Society. And by '96, we were able to start her and taxi her under her own power. And we were doing that ever since. The intercom is going live over the PA.
Right, what one number was it?
She's 105 feet in length, and the fin at the top there is 27 feet 5 inches. The extra 5 inches are our pigeon deterrent mechanism. The wingspan's 111 feet. She weighs, as she sits here, about 50 tons. When she was fully fueled, she could take internally, in the 14 fuel tanks she has, 72,000 pounds in weight, which is 9,000 gallons. And that gives her a range of 4,500 nautical miles. Each engine, the Olympus 301, produces 20,000 pounds of static thrust at its maximum power. And internally, Eric tells me, and Eric's our chief engineer, that that's the equivalent of 52,000 horsepower.
I'm Eric Ranshaw. When I left school at 18, I started a graduate apprenticeship with Bristol Siddeley, who've made the engines for this aircraft. The Vulcan has got a pretty good reputation for reliability, and we're pretty lucky here. We haven't really had a great deal in the way of recurring problems. In fact, the time we do spend on the aircraft nowadays, we're trying to bring more systems back into service that haven't been used for 30, 40 years. We've been working, for example, on the military flight system, a system that amalgamates all of the inputs from the various flying instrumentation, airspeed, altitude, attitude, and combines them into something that is an easy input for the pilot. Now, that system hasn't been used literally since the aircraft arrived here. The more things that we can show to our visitors, the more visitors we're going to get. The more people we can attract, the more funds we can attract to work on even more things.
I happen to be the chairman of the XM655 Maintenance Preservation Society, which means that I'm also the T-boy. Volunteers come and go as you do with any organisation, but we've been extremely lucky. I think we've got more talent on the engineering side here than we had on the RAF stations, frankly. We have an engineering side to it of about 25 volunteers.
We've got people who worked on Vulcans in service, including one who actually worked on this aircraft, right through to teachers, people with no engineering background at all, and they can all be used.
I'm very lucky. We all get on. It's a very good bunch of people, and they're a joy to be with. I'll make the team very happily for this bunch.